Ma'am, don't get in the car. The words sliced through the quiet afternoon air in downtown Chicago, sharp and desperate enough to stop time. Celeste Marlowe froze, her hand resting on the chrome handle of her sleek black sedan. For a moment, the world around her ruptured. The honking cars, the distant sirens, the footsteps of commuters, the wind snaking between glass towers, all of it faded, leaving only that raw, panicked voice. Two men in dark suits, her top-tier private security, moved in unison, eyes already locking on the source of the disruption. From an emergency exit at the base of the Halcyon Research Tower, a man in a faded gray janitor's uniform stumbled out, face slick with sweat. Caleb Warren, single father, graveyard shift custodian, a man used to being invisible, now trembling in full view of the city. "Stay back," one guard barked, placing himself between Celeste and the stranger. The second security officer rushed forward, grabbing Caleb, spinning him, and slamming him against the limestone wall of the skyscraper. Caleb let out a pained grunt, a ring of keys clattering to the sidewalk. "Don't let her get in," Caleb gasped, craning his neck to keep his eyes on Celeste. "Please." "You can't." Celeste's shock crystallized into fury. She was already 12 minutes late for a meeting that could not be postponed. A meeting cloaked in absolute secrecy. Her entire afternoon had been scheduled with surgical precision. And now this? "Graves!" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to carve stone. "What the hell is going on?" Graves, her lead bodyguard, kept scanning the street, eyes flicking across rooftops, hands hovering near the inside of his jacket. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "that's Caleb Warren. Night shift janitor. He's unstable." "No!" Caleb cried, as his arms were wrenched behind him. "Just listen, just for a second. The car, it's not safe." The word, safe, hung in the air like a threat. In Celeste's world, safe was not a word thrown around lightly. It was something measured, calculated, parsed through layers of risk reports, insurance clauses, and digital surveillance. But when screamed by a frantic janitor on a crowded street, it meant only one thing. Graves's posture shifted. "Ma'am," he said, firmer now. "Step away from the vehicle, now!" It wasn't a suggestion anymore. He gestured to the second guard. "Lock it down. Call CPD bomb squad. Full perimeter." Celeste's jaw clenched. "A bomb? Really? He's clearly delusional." "Maybe," Graves replied evenly. "But we don't get paid to bet on maybe." Minutes later, the street had transformed into chaos. Squad cars sealed off the block. Lights flashed red and blue. Sirens blared. Curious bystanders gathered, cell phones aloft. Caleb knelt on the pavement in cuffs, sweat dripping from his brow, breathing shallow. He wasn't struggling anymore. He was just watching the car. Celeste stood behind the reinforced glass of the Halcyon lobby, watching her afternoon implode through layers of polished steel and mirrored reflections. Her perfectly calibrated world now lay smoldering at her feet. The driver had been pulled from the vehicle and stood pale behind police tape. The car, now isolated in the center of the street, sat like a tomb under the city sky. Caleb bowed his head. His only thought, he had stopped her. That was enough. But as the bomb disposal robot rolled forward, mechanical arm extended toward the undercarriage, a fresh wave of dread surged through him. He hadn't thought this far. He hadn't thought about consequences. He had only known one thing. He had to stop her from getting in that car. Everything else? He was now falling into the unknown. The shrill chorus of sirens echoed through the streets as emergency units sealed off the block surrounding Halcyon Tower. Under the fading light of a late Chicago afternoon, Caleb Warren knelt on the pavement, hands cuffed behind his back. shoulders heaving with every shallow breath. A uniformed officer approached, beginning a preliminary report. But Caleb didn't speak. His eyes remained locked on the sleek black sedan where the bomb disposal robot was inching forward, as if the last thread tethering his sanity was still wrapped around that car door handle. Behind the thick glass wall of the tower's grand lobby, Celeste Marlowe stood with her back straight, her face unreadable, but her eyes boiling. One of her security men stepped beside her, waiting for orders. "Take him away," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to slice clean through the tension. "Let the police deal with it." "Wait!" A voice cracked, dry and breaking like a fraying wire. "Neurosynaptic decay syndrome." Celeste flinched, as if someone had punched the air out of her lungs. Her posture didn't shift, but her eyes flickered and her hand lowered slowly from her earpiece. Almost no one knew that name. A disease so rare it didn't exist in public discourse. A disease that only she and a few trusted experts were supposed to know. Because it was the very thing her brother, Julian Marlowe, was slowly dying from. The wind whispered through the street. Machinery clicked and groaned. But Celeste heard nothing else, only those 3 words. "Repeat that," she said, for the first time stepping toward the man on his knees. "What did you just say?" Caleb looked up. His vision was blurred from stress, but in the depths of his eyes was a steady ache, one that refused to break. "I know what you're doing," he said softly. "I know where they're keeping him, and I know they're killing him the same way they're killing my daughter." Celeste's skin went cold. 3 months earlier. A small apartment on the 12th floor of a worn-out building in South Chicago. Caleb opened the door quietly, slung off his work bag, and set a brown paper lunch sack on the chipped kitchen counter. He moved silently toward the living room. Lily, 7 years old, had fallen asleep on the couch, a colored pencil still tucked between her fingers. A half-finished drawing rested on her lap. A small house, a tall oak tree, a big sun with a smiley face. Caleb knelt, gently picked up the paper, then lightly touched her trembling hand. It shook. Just slightly, but enough to squeeze his heart like a fist. The doctors had called it early onset, but what he saw each day, the pencil slipping from her grip, the stumbling steps, the subtle way she tried to hide it, was like 1,000 pins driven into his chest. He had asked, begged even, for a chance, a trial, anything, but they had only shaken their heads. "There's nothing we can do, Mr. Warren, unless you've got a few $1,000,000 to fund your own research initiative." 1 week later, Janitor's closet, 27th floor. Midnight. Caleb had found a bag of shredded documents in a locked waste bin. He didn't know why he stopped. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was that one doctor's words echoing in his ears. "The world doesn't care about people like you." So he stayed late. In that closet that reeked of bleach and old mop water, Caleb spent 3 nights with a roll of tape and an aching back, carefully reconstructing pages from more than 160 fragments. Then he saw it. Langford Initiative, Phase 3 Trial Subject, Julian M. The name struck like thunder. Marlowe. He had seen it on the donor plaques, on the golden nameplate outside the 50th floor executive suite. At the bottom of the page was a note, barely legible. Adverse reaction, unstable results, mortality, redacted. That was when he understood. They weren't healing anyone. They were experimenting. And someone close to power, was paying for it with their life. Back to the present. Graves looked to Celeste for confirmation, but she didn't speak. "Uncuff him," she finally said, voice low. "Bring him upstairs. I'll question him myself." Caleb let his head fall forward and exhaled, like a man who had just emerged from the longest night of his life. The 50th floor conference room at Marlowe Industries resembled a glass box suspended in the sky above Chicago. 3 sides were floor-to-ceiling windows, exposing the dazzling city below like a glowing, living map. At the center of the room stood a long obsidian conference table, its surface polished to a mirror-like sheen. Caleb Warren sat at one end, arms tightly crossed over his chest, the ceiling lights casting shadows across his face still smudged with grime. Opposite him, Celeste Marlowe leaned against the glass wall, holding an open tablet in her arms. No one spoke during the first few minutes. Only the soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional creak of glass as wind brushed the skyscraper filled the silence. "Neurosynaptic decay syndrome," Celeste said, her voice low but clear. "Fewer than 2,000 documented cases worldwide. So, tell me, Caleb Warren, a night shift janitor, how do you know about a condition only studied in advanced neurological research centers?" Caleb took a deep breath. "Because my daughter has it," he said. "Lily, 7 years old. Diagnosed 6 months ago." Celeste's expression flickered. She gave a small nod, signaling him to continue. Her hands started trembling. She couldn't hold her crayons, lost balance while running. The doctors couldn't explain it. Not at first. Eventually, they gave the diagnosis, NSDS, and along with it, a sentence: no cure, no research, no hope. He paused, eyes fixed on the table as if he were seeing Lily again, sitting on the couch, holding a crayon she couldn't use to draw a perfect circle. "I started digging, typed hundreds of keywords, broke into medical libraries late at night, but that name barely existed, until I found scraps of shredded paper in a disposal bin on the 27th floor, pieced them together, and saw the name, Julian Marlowe." Celeste narrowed her eyes, saying nothing. "I wasn't sure at first," Caleb continued, "but I saw the name of the program, Langford Initiative, research protocols, concealed mortality data, and then I saw him, your brother, mentioned multiple times in the biomedical logs. Notes like unstable, non-responsive, subject 01. He looked directly into Celeste's eyes. "They're not looking for a cure, Ms. Marlowe. They're experimenting, and your brother is their most valuable test subject." The room held its breath. Celeste stepped toward the table, tapped a few commands on her tablet, then turned the screen toward Caleb. "This is your daughter's medical file," she said. "I requested it from St. Jude Hospital just now." Caleb glanced at it. MRI scans, tremor charts, levels of neural degeneration. Everything matched. Celeste nodded faintly, as if confirming what she had already suspected in the back of her mind. "So it's true." "I'm not lying," Caleb said. "I'm not crazy." "No," Celeste replied, folding her arms, "but I don't know yet if you have another agenda." "I don't have the right to ask for your trust," Caleb said calmly, his voice strangely steady. "And frankly, I don't care. I only need one thing." He stopped, his eyes turned red. "You don't have to believe me. Just save my daughter." The words fell into the space between them like a prayer, voiceless and desperate. Celeste remained quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice as cold as ever. "You have 2 choices. 1, I call the police back and let them press charges for citywide panic. 2, you sit down and tell me everything you know. From the beginning. No missing details." Caleb looked at her. No fear, no anger. "I've already started losing everything, Ms. Marlowe. I have no other choice but to tell the truth." Good, Celeste nodded. Then give me a reason not to erase you from my life, forever. Caleb inhaled, straightened his posture. I'll give you a reason, he said, but I warn you, if you truly listen to the end, you will never be able to return to the life you had before. Celeste frowned slightly, but didn't reply. I didn't come here to destroy, Caleb said. I came here because I thought, maybe, you too once lost someone you couldn't save. The words landed softly, but inside Celeste, something cracked. A tremor beneath the surface. A tiny fracture in the glass wall she'd built around herself long ago. Night had fallen over Chicago, but the 50th floor of Halcyon Research Tower still blazed with light. Celeste Marlowe sat in her private office, 3 large monitors before her displaying endless charts, figures, and transaction logs. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, calling up one data stream after another. Celeste was not the kind of CEO who waited passively for reports. She had trained herself long ago to read numbers like a second language. Numbers never lied. If you stared long enough, deceit always revealed itself. And tonight, it had. A modest research fund, officially earmarked for equipment purchases, had ballooned into millions of dollars. But the money never reached hospitals, nor the company's internal labs. Instead, it funneled through 3 shell corporations before landing in the cold ledger of a firm called Griffin Analytics. Celeste frowned. Griffin was no research firm. On paper, it was a vague data consultancy in Delaware, its address nothing more than a mailbox. But the name on its filings made her blood run cold. Victor Rausch. She knew him all too well. A scientist once contracted by the company, disgraced for gross ethical violations. He'd disappeared after the scandal 5 years ago. She thought she had cut him out of her world for good. And now, here he was, fed by her own funding. Celeste pressed the intercom. Bring Finch up, now. Within minutes, Dr. Alistair Finch, Director of Research, walked in. Tall and thin, gray suit immaculate, silver-framed glasses glinting, and that polite smile of his, polished to the point of falseness. Celeste, I hear you wanted to see me. Sit. Her voice was like ice. Finch sat, still wearing his courteous smile. I've just gone over the finances. A research fund routed through 3 subsidiaries. The final recipient, Griffin Analytics. Explain. Finch raised his brows, feigning surprise. Griffin? Honestly, I don't handle subcontractors directly. Finance must have... Celeste slammed her hand against the table. Don't waste my time. Griffin is a shell, and I know who runs it. Finch hesitated, then adjusted his glasses. Celeste, you must understand. Biomedical progress requires flexibility. Rausch may have a tarnished reputation, but his expertise, no one else can match it. Without him, the project would have collapsed. Celeste's gaze sharpened. So you kept it from me? You let me sign budgets without knowing I was paying a man I exiled? You let him into my facilities, experimenting on patients, including my own brother? This time Finch's smile evaporated. His face turned ashen, though his voice stayed even. I did it to save Julian, to save thousands more. Rausch has unconventional methods. But if we succeed, no one will care about his past. You'll be the name atop a new era of medicine. Celeste gave a short, bitter laugh. You speak as though I should thank you. I'm only speaking the truth. Truth? Her voice cut like a blade. The truth is you betrayed me. You sold out ethics, sold out Julian's life, to make deals with the devil I already cast out. Finch leaned back, shrugging faintly. Perhaps. But you of all people know, in this world, only results matter. Celeste stepped closer, looming over him, eyes blazing. You're right about one thing. Only results matter. And the result is, you've just buried yourself. She turned sharply. Graves! The door swung open. Her head of security strode in, his expression hard as steel. Ready the plane, Celeste ordered, her words clipped, decisive. Tonight, we fly to South Haven. Finch stiffened. What are you planning to do? Celeste looked back, her eyes burning. Take back the truth, and if I must, bury every traitor who dared hide it in the dark. The helicopter touched down outside the South Haven biotech complex, a massive block of concrete on the outskirts of the city, ringed by barbed wire fences and floodlights sweeping across the sky like cold, unblinking eyes. Celeste stepped out first, the wind lashing her dark hair. Graves followed close behind, a concealed weapon under his coat. Last came Caleb, his calloused hands gripping the straps of a worn backpack filled not with guns, but with janitor's tools, things he believed could prove more useful than weapons. Celeste pointed toward the main gate, where armed guards patrolled in tight formation. We can't enter there. Security's stacked. Weapon scans, facial recognition, thermal sensors. We'd be spotted instantly. Caleb's gaze didn't settle on the walls or guards. He looked at the pipes. Massive conduits crisscrossed the facility's exterior, connecting chemical vats, ventilation shafts, and utility tunnels. A faint smile tugged at his lips, thin but resolute. There's another way. Celeste eyed him, doubtful. What are you suggesting? Caleb pulled out a hand-drawn sketch from his bag, scrawled notes he had memorized long ago while cleaning up after engineers. The acid treatment system. I saw the blueprints back at Halcyon. This place is built the same way. A network of industrial pipes leading straight into the core. They never expect anyone insane enough to crawl through them. But I've done it before. Graves frowned. You're saying we crawl through acid pipes? Caleb nodded calmly. The main line doesn't carry acid at all times. There are purge and rinse cycles. If we time it right, we've got 12 safe minutes to cross. I've serviced systems like this. I know the smell, the flow rhythm, the hiss in the metal. We'll make it. Celeste hesitated. Doubt in her eyes gave way to something else, an unwilling but growing trust. Fine. You lead. 15 minutes later. The three of them crawled on their elbows through a narrow steel tube. Every clang echoed like thunder. The acrid scent of corrosion stung their lungs. Graves brought up the rear, rifle clutched to his chest, sweat soaking his shirt. Celeste moved steadily in the middle, breath even but eyes sharp. Caleb led the way, calloused palms pressed against the pipe's skin, listening to the vibrations as if the structure were alive. Every so often, he raised his hand, signaling a stop, head tilted to catch the subtle music of machinery. Celeste and Graves obeyed in silence. For Caleb, this was his world, a world others deemed filthy, invisible, meaningless. But to him, each shudder of steel, each bead of condensation, was a language only he understood. Stop, Caleb whispered. He pressed his ear against the pipe, eyes closed. A dry, rasping hiss echoed from afar. Acid purge cycle starting. If we move now, we won't make it out alive. Celeste gripped the metal rim, her gaze fixed on him. You're sure? Caleb opened his eyes, steady and unwavering. I've listened to this all my life. Trust me. And they waited. Darkness swallowed them whole. Only the crack of metal expanding under chemical flush filled the void. Then, silence. Caleb motioned forward. They emerged inside. A hatch lifted, revealing a concrete corridor bathed in sickly green neon. Celeste glanced around. No cameras, no guards, only a distant sound, wheels grinding against the floor. They hugged the wall, following the noise. The passage opened into a wide chamber. Dozens of mercenaries in black combat gear moved in formation, rifles slung across their chests. They were pushing biohazard containers, marked with red warning symbols. On one lid, Caleb caught the faint lettering. Subject 01, Marlowe, Julian. His chest clenched. He turned to Celeste. The icy mask she always wore cracked for the first time, fear seizing her features. Graves tightened his grip on his rifle, scanning the room. They're moving him, and from the way they're acting, this isn't a transfer. It's disposal. Caleb felt his blood run cold, yet fire roared inside him, hotter than ever. He turned to Celeste, voice hoarse but firm. If we don't stop them right now, your brother won't have another chance. Celeste bit her lip, eyes flashing. She turned to Graves. Get ready. And there they stood, an unlikely trio, a CEO, a bodyguard, and a janitor, facing a squad of mercenaries on the brink of risking everything to save one life from being erased. The screech of steel wheels echoed as mercenaries continued pushing biohazard containers toward the freight chamber. Caleb's brow furrowed as he studied them. Then he shook his head. Number, something's wrong. This is a diversion. Celeste turned sharply, tension etched across her face. What do you mean? Caleb pointed at the label. The markings are too obvious. No one stupid enough would stamp Subject 01, Marlowe, Julian in plain sight. They want us to think he's in there. But in reality, he's hidden somewhere no one would look. He closed his eyes, listening again to the memory of airflow through ducts, the rhythm of the building systems. Then he opened them, whispering, the old operating wing? East Block. I saw it on the maintenance schematics. It's decommissioned, but still connected to the air filtration system. If they wanted to dispose of him discreetly, that's the perfect place. Graves nodded firmly. Makes sense. We move now. East Wing Corridor. The heavy steel door groaned as it opened. Inside, the air reeked of stale disinfectant and mildew, the smell of a place abandoned years ago. Dim lights flickered over rows of covered operating tables. And at the center, Julian Marlowe, lying motionless on an old surgical bed, his body wired to IV lines and outdated monitors. Beside him, Finch and Victor Rausch adjusted equipment. On a tray sat a murky yellow fluid bag, its tube running straight into Julian's veins. Celeste froze. Julian! Her voice broke. Finch startled, spinning around. Celeste? Impossible! Rausch smirked, unfazed. Ah, the CEO herself. Perfect timing. You'll witness the sacrifice progress demands. Celeste's fists clenched. Sacrifice? You're killing my brother. Finch stammered. Celeste, I only wanted to save him. This is the final trial. If it works... Caleb cut him off, voice steady as steel. Don't listen. Look at that IV bag. Celeste turned. The yellow fluid bubbled faintly, releasing tiny pockets of air. Caleb stepped closer, eyes locked on it. I've scrubbed down hundreds of labs. I know the difference between a nutrient solution and a corrosive purge. That bag doesn't belong here. Celeste focused and saw the label had been scraped off, replaced by a forged sticker. Her chest tightened. My God, they're pumping poison into Julian. Rausch's smile widened. He's no longer of value. A failed subject must be erased. You're too sentimental, Celeste. And sentiment is what will destroy you. Celeste raised the gun Graves had slipped her, hands trembling but eyes blazing. Number, it's what will destroy you. She lunged forward, ripped the IV line from Julian's arm, and hurled the toxic bag to the floor. It burst, sizzling as corrosive liquid ate into steel, releasing a sharp, acrid smoke. Julian groaned faintly, his eyelids fluttering. Celeste fell to her knees beside him, gripping his hand. "You're not dying. Not while I'm here." Caleb rushed to stabilize the remaining lines, adjusting oxygen flow. His voice rasped but steady. "He still has a chance. Keep him conscious. I'll cut off the toxic feed." Graves planted himself at the doorway, rifle aimed squarely at Finch and Rausch. "Nobody leaves." Rausch laughed, the sound chilling. "You think saving one man changes anything? This system is bigger than all of you combined." Caleb's jaw clenched, his eyes never leaving Julian. "Maybe, but no one is invisible when they fight for the ones they love." In that moment, Celeste realized a truth she had long denied. Real power didn't come from position or titles. It came from those willing to act, those society deemed invisible. Julian had been pulled back from the edge. His breaths were weak, but they were still there. And to Celeste, that was the greatest victory of her life. Alarm sirens blared throughout the South Haven complex. Red lights flashed across the concrete ceilings, casting jagged shadows of 3 figures running down a narrow corridor. Caleb supported Julian's weight, while Celeste kept pace, gripping the pistol in her trembling hand. Behind them, the pounding of boots grew louder. Reinforcements were closing in. Shouts and the metallic clatter of rifles being cocked echoed like hammers against their chests. Graves ran at the rear, his eyes like steel, rifle in hand. He knew exactly where this chase would end. "Go! I'll hold them off!" Celeste spun around, fire in her eyes. "No! We leave together!" A rare smile flickered across Graves's weathered face. "You're the CEO. He's your brother. And Warren." He gave Caleb a quick glance. "He's got someone to fight for." "Me? I don't." Before Celeste could protest, Graves turned, unleashing a barrage of fire down the corridor. Bullets thundered, shaking the walls. Caleb dragged Celeste forward, voice raw. "We're out of time." They reached the old freight elevator. A rusted steel door groaned open. Inside sat a massive cargo lift, coated in dust, its control panel lifeless. Celeste's heart clenched. "The elevator's been disabled," Caleb panted, scanning every bolt and wire with sharp eyes. To most, it was useless scrap. To him, it was a familiar script. "No, it can still work." He urged Celeste and Julian inside. She hesitated, clutching her brother's hand, but Caleb's gaze was steady, unshakable. "Trust me." The door slammed shut as the first bullets slammed into the metal. Outside, Graves's gunfire cracked in relentless bursts. Then, crash! Graves triggered the emergency release. The cable snapped free. The entire freight car jolted, plunging into free fall. Celeste screamed, clutching Julian tight. Their bodies lifted weightless, hurtling into darkness. Amid the roar of rushing air, Caleb pressed himself to the charred control panel. His hands shook but didn't falter. He tore open the casing, revealing a nest of tangled wires. Memories flashed. Late nights splicing old wires, patching fans, fixing decrepit lifts. The invisible work of a janitor, thankless, unseen, was now the only thing standing between them and death. He muttered to himself, almost like a prayer. Red wire, skip the green, reroute the auxiliary feed. God, don't let this blow. Celeste's voice trembled. "Do you even know what you're doing?" "No," Caleb grit out, sparks flying against his face. "But I've fixed elevators worse than this." A violent jolt shocked his hand, but he held on, twisting the last wires together, when suddenly, grind! The mechanical brakes slammed into place. The elevator shuddered violently, then screeched to a halt, just a few meters above the basement floor. The three of them collapsed in a heap. Celeste gasped for breath, heart racing, but when she opened her eyes, they were alive. Julian wheezed weakly, eyelids fluttering. Celeste held him close, tears welling. "You're safe. You're still here." Caleb slumped against the wall, his hand scorched and smoking, but his eyes burned with fierce resolve. "Graves bought us time. Now it's on us to finish this." Celeste gripped his trembling hand tightly, nodding hard. "We won't let his sacrifice be in vain." The truck rattled violently as it barreled out the back gate of South Haven. Caleb sat pressed against the wall inside the cargo hold, one arm cradling Julian, the other gripping a broken metal bar, as if ready to strike. Celeste sat opposite, eyes locked on the small rear hatch, her breath sharp and heavy in the oil-scented dark. The wail of alarms still echoed in the distance, but grew fainter with each mile. Only the growl of the engine and the pounding of their hearts filled the space. Suddenly, a noise came from the corner of the truck. Caleb jerked, bar raised. The hatch banged open, and a figure was shoved inside. Dr. Alistair Finch, pale, drenched in sweat. He stumbled to the floor, scrambling up with hands outstretched. "Wait! We can make a deal!" Celeste leveled her pistol at him, voice icy. "A deal? After everything you've done?" Finch's desperate eyes turned to Caleb. "Listen to me. Warren, I know about your daughter's illness. I have the data. I have the experimental formula. If you help me escape, I can give you what no one else can. A chance to save Lily." Caleb froze. The name cut into him like a blade. Lily, her tiny hands trembling, unable to draw a circle, flashed through his mind. Finch pressed on, lowering his voice like a serpent's whisper. "Just one nod. Trade my life for hers. That's all it takes. A small price, isn't it?" The truck fell silent. Even Celeste held her breath, finger tight on the trigger, watching Caleb. But Caleb straightened, eyes blazing. He strode forward, seized Finch by the collar, and yanked him close. "You are not allowed to speak her name." His voice was raw, trembling with fury. A heartbeat later, he shoved Finch hard to the floor. Celeste slowly lowered her gun, her gaze fixed on Caleb. In that moment, she understood. His choice defined him. A father who would never barter love for compromise with darkness. The truck roared onto the highway. Celeste pulled out a satellite phone, tapping a coded sequence. Her voice rang sharp and unwavering. "This is Celeste Marlowe. Emergency request. Activate the operation. Target, South Haven Biotech Complex. Deploy full strike immediately." On the other end, the FBI voice answered briskly, "Confirmed. Tactical units en route." Celeste dropped the phone, eyes hard as steel. For the first time, she was no longer just a CEO ensnared in corporate shadows. She was a sister, a commander, ready to burn down an empire to save the truth. St. Jude's Hospital. Hours later. Julian was rushed into intensive care. Doctors swarmed, hooking monitors, stabilizing vitals, pumping replacement fluids. Celeste stood outside the glass, hand trembling, as she watched her brother cling to life. Tears spilled freely, not from despair this time, but from hope. Caleb sat slumped in the waiting area, his burned hand wrapped in bandages, exhaustion etched into his face. Yet for the first time in months, he believed Lily was one step closer to a chance at life. Heavy footsteps approached. Celeste turned and froze. A stretcher rolled in. On it lay Graves, bloodied, armor shredded, but still alive. His eyes opened, steady, defiant. "Told you. Not my time yet," Graves rasped with a crooked smile. Celeste broke, grabbing his hand. "You're insane. Completely insane." Graves let out a ragged laugh, weary but proud. Maybe, but some kinds of insane are worth it. News of the raid on South Haven spread across the world. Evidence poured out, falsified records, hidden test results, footage of patients treated as disposable subjects. The name Marlowe, once synonymous with financial power, was now tied to a medical revolution. At a press conference, Celeste stood before a wall of cameras, her voice calm but resonant. From today, all the real data will be made public. We are founding the Marlowe Warren Foundation, an independent and transparent institution dedicated to researching and treating neurosynaptic decay syndrome. No child will be abandoned. No parent will ever again be forced to fight alone in the dark. Behind her, Caleb stood quietly. He wasn't used to flashbulbs, to applause. But when he saw his daughter's name, Warren, etched beside Marlowe, his heart tightened with an emotion too deep for words. The first two patients officially entered treatment. Julian Marlowe, once labeled Subject 01, and Lily Warren, the 7-year-old daughter of a nameless night janitor. Julian's recovery exceeded expectations. The tremors eased, and clarity returned to his gaze. Lily endured painful therapies, yet each day brought progress, sometimes as small as standing without falling, sometimes as miraculous as drawing a perfect circle with her crayons. 6 months later, a golden afternoon bathed the porch of Caleb's home. The scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the sound of laughter. Out in the yard, Lily darted joyfully across the lawn with Julian, the two chasing each other around a great oak. Lily's laughter rang pure, washing away the memory of illness. Julian, taller now, slowed his steps so she could catch him, his face radiant as though youth itself had been restored. On the porch steps, Caleb and Celeste sat side by side, shoulders brushing lightly. No more accusations, no walls of power or suspicion. Just two people who had walked through hell and found hope together. Lily bounded over, clutching a paint-smudged drawing. She held it high toward the sun, her eyes shining. "Daddy! Auntie Celeste! Look!" The picture showed 5 figures: Caleb, Lily, Celeste, Julian, and a towering form, Graves. All stood beneath the oak tree, hands clasped. Across the top, Lily had scrawled, "My family." Caleb's throat closed, his eyes wet but burning with joy. Celeste smiled softly, turning to him, her voice warmer than it had ever been. "You think you're not a hero, Caleb. But those who protect the ones they love are always heroes." Caleb said nothing. He simply reached out, taking her hand, not as a pact, but as a quiet truth shared. And in that still afternoon, beneath the green canopy of the oak, they all knew, at last, none of them would ever be invisible again. No one is invisible when they fight for love. If this story touched your heart, please support us by liking this video, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. Just one small click, but it gives us the strength to keep going. Just like Caleb, a janitor who could save the world.